In today's video, we're taking a look at the 2021 NHL Draft Lottery. We now know when it's going to be. We also have the new odds, considering we have an extra team in the lottery this year. So we'll look at how that breaks down. And then we're going to do a draft lottery simulation to play around to see who gets first overall. And then we're going to do a top 10 selection. We'll jump into that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're doing a draft lottery simulation and mock draft. But first, before we jump into that, we have some news on the draft lottery itself. We can now confirm that the NHL will be holding the draft lottery on June the 2nd. So mark that on your calendars. So for the 16 teams that are not in the NHL playoffs, that's when they will find their fate and determine the draft order for the first 16 spots in the 2021 NHL draft. Now, of course, the odds had to be adjusted this year, given that we have an extra team in the mix. Of course, for the longest time, we had 15 teams not make the playoffs. So now the lottery is going to consist of 16 teams. So obviously everything had to be adjusted here a little bit. So I'm going to give you a graphic up on the screen. It'll show you the 16 teams in the order of the best to worst odds for the 2021 NHL draft. And of course, we're only going to have 2 lottery spots take place this year instead of the 3. So let's now look at the odds for the 16 teams not in this year's playoffs. So as you can see, the odds have been adjusted here. The team that has the best odds at first overall this year is the Buffalo Sabres, who are last in the standings. But the odds of them getting it are certainly not as good as in years past with the extra team in there, as I mentioned. So now they have a 16.6% chance of getting the first overall pick. The Anaheim Ducks were second last, so they have a 12.1% chance at first overall. The Seattle Kraken, we know, are already going to have the third best odds. That was part of their expansion agreement when they first agreed to come into the NHL. Jersey Devils are going to have the fourth best odds, but technically tied for third with Seattle. They also have a 10.3% chance. So obviously with Seattle coming in this year, they had an arrangement to be the third best. So they would be the same as the third worst team in the NHL. Of course, next up we have the Columbus Blue Jackets at 8.5%, followed by Detroit at 7.6%. The San Jose Sharks are next at 6.7%, followed by the LA Kings at 5.8%. Then you've got the Vancouver Canucks at 5.4%. The Ottawa Senators at 10th worst in the NHL at 4.5%. The Arizona Coyotes have a 3.1% chance. And of course, the Coyotes' first-round pick has been forfeited because of their punishment for the scandal there with testing draft-eligible players before. So if that were to win the lottery, I'm not really sure what they would do in that regard, and it could certainly create some drama and entertainment. So we'll see what happens there. But the Coyotes have a 3.1% chance. The Hawks at 2.7% are next. The Flames at 2.2%. Philly with a low 1.8%, Dallas with a 1.4%, and the New York Rangers with a 1% chance. So certainly not a huge deal. So those are the new odds here for winning the draft lottery in the 2021 draft lottery. So now we're going to hop onto the computer. We're going to go into tankathon.com. We're going to run a draft lottery simulation, see where the teams fall here, and then we'll conduct a mock draft, but just for the top 10 selections. We will be doing deeper mock drafts here in the future, but for tonight, we're just doing a top 10, and then we'll go from there. So let's hop on and see who will be picking first overall. All right, so here we are on tankathon.com with the 2021 NHL Draft Lottery simulation. So we have everything up here. Let's sim the lottery, and we will see who gets first overall. And there we have it. The Buffalo Sabres actually get first overall. So that'll be the second time here in the last number of years. Of course, they had the Rasmus Dahlin draft a few years back. So we have Buffalo at first. We have the Los Angeles Kings with the second overall pick. They get to move up 6 spots. Then that gives us Anaheim, Seattle, New Jersey, Columbus, Detroit, San Jose, Vancouver, and the Ottawa Senators here at number 10. So now we'll hop over here and do a mock draft for these top 10 selections. Picking first overall, the Buffalo Sabres would select Owen Power from the University of Michigan, the 6'5", 214-pound defenseman. In my opinion, should be the consensus number 1 overall pick regardless of who lands there. I mean, we could see something different, but I think the odds are fairly slim. He's also a tad bit older. He's going to be 18 and a half years old. He's had a good opportunity not only to play at the University of Michigan, but play for his country in the past as well. Had a really terrific career here, so I think he's going to Buffalo in this mock draft. Picking second overall, again this year, is the Los Angeles Kings, and I have them taking Swedish defenseman Simon Edvinsson. Now, of course, the LA Kings, to be honest, in this spot, I wouldn't be shocked if they traded down. I can't see them trading to pick completely. You never know. However, I would think that they might trade down here because they have such a deep prospect pool that they might feel that they can get a guy like him a little lower if somebody wants to try to move up, if there's a desire there. But I mean, Edvinsson, 6'4", 185 pounds, top defenseman from Sweden. One of the top 2 or 3 guys here in the draft for the position. They got the size, the reach, everything going on here. Like, this guy has potential to be a really solid defenseman. If you look at the Kings prospect pool, I think they're pretty deep all around, but I'd say they're deeper with forwards than they are defense. So to me, if they're going to hold on to this pick, they're going to take one of the top defensemen available in the draft at the time. Picking 3rd overall, the Anaheim Ducks are going to select American-born center Matty Beniers. Now, Beniers is probably one of the top forwards, if not the top forward here in this 2021 NHL draft. Of course, he's from Michigan here as well, 18 and a half years old, 6'1", 175 pounds. Beniers had a terrific World Junior tournament at the U20s. Obviously a guy that can be really solid at both ends of the ice and certainly projects to be a fairly high-end forward. If you look at the Anaheim Ducks, I mean, they could go a different direction here, but in my opinion, they're bound to take probably the top forward here in the draft. I mean, they got Jamie Drysdale recently as their last first-round pick, so I think this time around they'll go a different direction, see if they can grab themselves a center, and they're bound to be picking here pretty high, and Beniers makes a lot of sense based on what else they have in their prospect pool. Picking next, we have the Seattle Kraken with their very first ever draft selection, and I have them taking Dylan Guenther, the left winger from Edmonton in the Western Hockey League. Now, he's 6'1", 170 pounds, not far off from being 19 years old, actually, and he is in a situation here where he's one of the better forwards available. Now, of course, he's represented Canada at the U18s in the past. Of course, like I said, plays for the Edmonton Oil Kings in the Western Hockey League. Unfortunately, had a limited amount of games this past season, but certainly put up some impressive numbers there in the previous season. And Guenther, I think, really could be a good player for Seattle. They are in a situation where they need a little bit of everything because they won't really have any kind of a prospect pool except for any players they get in the expansion draft that kind of fall into this category still. So to me, they'll take who they feel is the best player available, and that selection for me, I think that's where they would go. Next up at number 5, we have the New Jersey Devils, and if he's available to the Canucks or the Devils when they're picking here, they're going to take Luke Hughes. There's no doubt. I mean, the Canucks and the New Jersey Devils each have one of the Hughes brothers on their team. They're both phenomenal players, and Luke is going to be a phenomenal player here as well. Be awesome to see him play with one of his brothers, and they're both going to be likely picking here in the top 10. Of course, Luke Hughes is 6'2", 175 pounds, so certainly has size over defenseman Quinn Hughes, his brother, obviously bigger in stature in that regard. He's not 18 years old yet. He won't be 18 until September, so he still has some more growing to do as well. So he's got a little bit of a different dynamic than his brothers. But of course, like his brother Quinn, is going to be attending the University of Michigan, and I think New Jersey will snag him in a second if he's available. I don't think the Canucks are going to have really good luck in the draft lottery to have any shot at getting Luke, but the Devils will be picking higher, and if he's there, that's their selection. Next up, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I have them taking Kent Johnson, the 6'1" center from Michigan. Michigan's going to have a lot of top picks here in the top 10 this year in the 21 draft. Johnson is a player I think would be a huge help to the Jackets. Of course, after trading Pierre-Luc Dubois, they're a little thin on the center position. I think Johnson would be a player that should project to play center ice at the NHL level. He has a ton of offensive abilities and could be that top 6 center that the Jackets need. He's going to be a tough player for them to trade for. They're likely going to have to draft him, and obviously, I think they can't pass this up here. I mean, there's some other picks that they can look at, like Wallstedt or Lysell or Eklund, but to me, they take the center. That's what they need. He's already proven last year at the University of Michigan to put up some good numbers, 27 points in 26 games. That's going to continue to get better. He's likely going to stay in college for another year or two. This depends, obviously, on where things are at with his development, but he would be a great pick for Columbus. Next up, we have the Red Wings, and again, I have them taking goaltender Jesper Wallstedt. Now, in the other mock drafts, I've had them taking him as well, and I think, honestly, he's the perfect player for them. They don't have the deepest prospect pool, but they're certainly in a situation here where they have some interesting forward prospects. They have a few D prospects, but they really desperately need goaltending for the future here, and the Swedish goaltender can provide that. He's 6'3", 214 pounds already, and he's only 18 and a half years old. He's going to continue to grow and get better. Wallstedt's already in a situation where he's played at the World Juniors for his country, had some pretty solid club numbers during his time he played in the SHL, and I think he is the ideal prospect for what the Red Wings need, and based on where they're going to be picking, he's more likely going to be available and fits the bill. Next up, we have the San Jose Sharks, and at this point, they're not passing up on Brandt Clarke. And to be honest, depending on the draft here, I've had Clarke going much higher. He could, to me, he could go anywhere from like 2 down to like 7 or 8 or 9. It just really depends on who's picking here. But if Clarke is available, if San Jose were to really pick in this selection, they're not going to pass him up. He's a solid right shot defenseman with really good offensive instincts and would be a huge help to that blue line. Right now they have an aging blue line that's tied up with a lot of money. And in a few years' time when he's ready to make that jump, then obviously the San Jose Sharks are going to need players like him that not only can play and contribute but have those cheaper ELCs to help them offset their cap issues on the blue line. As guys like Vlasic and Burns and Karlsson continue to age and kind of get towards the latter part of their careers here. Next up, we have the Canucks, and I have them selecting William Eklund. Now, Eklund's a player I think would be a good help to the Canucks. Obviously, he's a guy who can play wing as well as center, playing in the SHL in Sweden, 5'10", 172 pounds, just a little bit over 18 and a half years old. Eklund's a guy who's tough to play against. I think he would add a different dynamic that the Canucks would like to add to the mix here. Now, for example, if Clarke was still available when the Canucks were picking, he'd be perfect for them as well. I think the Canucks very well could consider a defenseman, but if they end up picking up around 9, 10, around that range, then obviously a lot of those top D are going to be gone, and they're likely going to take a guy like Eklund. But if they have a little bit better luck here and they can pick even just a smidge higher, and they can get a guy like Clarke or even one of the other D that's a little bit higher, that would probably be the preferable choice here. Number 10, I have the Ottawa Senators taking homegrown boy Mason McTavish. McTavish is a player who's seen his stock rise a little bit here after a strong performance at the U18s. McTavish was a guy who's got great leadership skills, was an alternate captain and captain for a while when Canadian captain Shane Wright was down with an injury for a period of time. But McTavish, to me, is a guy playing in Peterborough in the OHL. He's 6'1", just shy of 200 pounds. You know he's going to continue to grow and get bigger, but he can play with a physical edge, play with some grit, and still give you some lots of offensive instincts. And he's a different kind of player who could mix well with that current young Ottawa Senators forward group. I mean, again, like the Canucks, they could stand and take a defenseman here if there's a real good one available. I'm sure they'd love to have Brandt Clarke, but if they're picking at 10, Clark's likely not available, and they go with the other hometown Ottawa boy here with McTavish. So that is your draft lottery simulation and top 10 selections. Of course, as always, want to know your thoughts on my selections down below in the comments. Let me know what players you think are best suited for these teams picking in the top 10 spots. Of course, the simulation is just that for right now until we get to June 2nd. We know the exact draft order. Then we can know the full order. We can do a mock draft based on a little bit more based on where we think these teams are going to go, since we'll know exactly for sure where they're picking. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest NHL news and rumors from all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.